Thank you. Honorable Gajendrakumar Ponnambalam, you have 18 minutes.
How many?
18 minutes.
I have 20.
Yes, the new amendment, 18 minutes has.
Honorable Deputy Chairman, I'm glad that I'm following Professor Tissavitarna, a progressive at heart, although he happens to be seated on the wrong side when this bill is being presented. I don't intend to go to the details of the bill, Honorable Deputy Chairman. I think many members on this side of the House have critiqued the bill sufficiently to show its lack of democracy and tightening the hold of the state in the hands of an individual. But you certainly have to ask yourself, why is the country facing this situation? Since 1978, particularly since 94, after over a decade of the 78 Constitution, there has been a clear move by members of both sides of this House, whichever party that was in power, realizing that the executive presidency was authoritarian in character, that the executive presidency must be demolished, it must be repealed, and a democratization process must commence. But that process is being reversed today. And one must ask why that is happening. I am not surprised. My party is not surprised, Mr. Deputy Chairman. And it is that point that I wish to make in my contribution today. I wish to draw to the attention of this House that there is a process of transformation that is taking place of the state. And what is happening today here is in fact consistent with the direction of that transformation. I disagree with my honorable friend Mr. Sumandran. My argument is that since 94 till now, what was happening was an anomaly. The 17th Amendment to the Constitution and the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was an anomaly. It was trying to reverse the direction in which the state has been traveling for the last 72 years. So for that point, I wish to draw your attention to the Salisbury Constitution, which is the first constitution that this country had since the British departed. As you know, the Salisbury Constitution came in the backdrop of the Pan-Sinhala Board of Ministers being appointed in 1936 January. And at that time, the Tamil politicians rose up against that move. They saw it as a very clearly nationalistic, Sinhala, hegemonic move to usurp state powers to one community, especially a community that is 75% in population. And in the debate that happened thereafter, particularly when the Salisbury Commission was sitting, eventually the Salisbury Commission came up with a constitution that can be described as moderately conservative form of liberal democracy based on the British system of government. And what was foremost in the mind of the Salisbury Commission at that time was to make sure that ethnic harmony was in some way in some way adhered to. They wanted to encourage a national consciousness and create a constitution that would meet the requirements of a plural society. That was the aim. And it was Article 29(2) which prohibited Parliament from conferring upon any community.
Order, please. Honorable Rohini, Vijayaratna to the chair, please.
I thank you, Madam. So Article 29(2) attempted to prohibit Parliament from conferring upon any community or religion a benefit that was not conferred on other communities or religions. It formed the cornerstone in creating the space for all the peoples that inhabited the island to explore the confines of a single state. It was precisely this overriding nature of Article 29(2) which made all actions of the state subservient to it and made any act that purported to violate it to be deemed unconstitutional. That created the bedrock, that created the fundamental agreement between the plurinational inhabitants of this island to come within that state. In a Privy Council judgment, Bribery Commission versus Ranasinghe, 1964-66 NLR at page 78, Lord Pierce, the Honourable G.L. Pierce is here, he would know this very well. Article 29(2) was seen as, says this, seen as forming a solemn balance of rights between the citizens of Ceylon, the fundamental conditions on which inter se they accepted the constitution, and these are therefore unalterable under the constitution. So that was the bedrock on which Sri Lanka got independence. And it was that Article 29(2), Madam Presiding Member, that the other non-Sinhala Buddhist people inhabiting this island were asked to repose confidence in remaining within Sri Lanka. There were certain other measures also. The creation of a second chamber, the Senate, Judicial Service Commission was independent, the Public Service Commission was independent, judicial appeals to the Privy Council. These are all measures that were created to safeguard the non-Sinhala Buddhists who at that time were having severe reservations with regards to the direction the Sri Lankan state would take post Pan-Sinhala Board of Ministers being appointed in 1936. But it didn't take long, Madam Presiding Member. The Ceylon Citizenship Act, 6 months after independence, Act number 18 of 1948, then thereafter the Official Languages Act, number 33 of 1956. These events make clear that despite Article 29(2), the Sri Lankan state was transforming. And it was transforming in the direction of becoming a Sinhala Buddhist hegemonic state. Then at that stage, precisely because of judgments like Lord Pierce, and also in the Kodiswaran case, where Article 29(2) were made the cornerstone, and the interpretation given was that Article 29(2) was the social contract that kept this country united, that made other communities to come together and to live within this one country. There was fear. And in 1972, when the first Republican Constitution was enacted, the tragedy was that that very social contract was done away with. The stated reason for the need for a new constitution was stated to rid the country of the remaining vestiges of British colonialism. That might be true. That might be true. In fact, the Honourable Prime Minister stated that he was very proud. He was very proud that that act took place. But in practice, the 1972 Constitution merely completed the process of state transformation into a Sinhala Buddhist centralized state. That is the direction Sri Lanka was taking. For the first time, Sri Lanka explicitly was declared as a unitary state. I already mentioned Article 29(2) was being removed. Removal of appeals to the Privy Council. The removal of the second chamber. These are all consistent with the direction that Sri Lanka was becoming a Sinhala Buddhist state, but at the same time, it was centralizing. Sinhala was made the sole official language. So the 1972 Constitution formally began the process of Sinhala Buddhist majoritarian hegemony. In other words, the 72 Constitution removed any pretenses of the state being a vehicle that would promote a national civic consciousness that would meet the aspirations of a multinational plural society, and effectively acknowledged it to be one of a Sinhala Buddhist identity. Under the 72 Constitution, madam, the Sinhala Buddhists became the custodians of the state. It is in this backdrop and it is in this direction that the 78 Constitution, the second Republican Constitution, was enacted. Now, at that time, Madam Chairperson, the Constitution was premised on the need for rapid economic development that necessitates political stability through the formation of a strong leadership, we were told, where the executive would be free from the whims and fancies of Parliament, and where the executive would be unafraid to take correct but unpopular decisions. But in reality, the 78 Constitution entrenched the Sinhala Buddhist character of the state by not only asking that 2/3 majority be required to alter it, but that you also needed to go to a referendum. Both the unitary character of the state and Buddhism being given the foremost place were cornerstones of entrenchment. And it is in that backdrop, madam, that we are debating this 20th Amendment. So it was after the 78 Constitution, after the J.R. Jayawardena and Ranasinghe Premadasa era, that there came a consensus amongst both sides of this House. Quite apart from the fact that the Tamils and the non-Sinhala Buddhists were ignored all along in this debate, we'll leave that aside. But there was a consensus that came from both sides of this House that this executive presidency was a disaster. And that was the small change. There was a moment where the Sinhala nation itself took a step back and began to question the character of the state. It wanted to democratize. It was trying to rebel against authoritarianism. And that was that moment of the 17th Amendment and the 19th Amendment.
Honourable Member, you have 2 minutes left.
But today, if we are going to reverse that and go back, it is only consistent with the 72-year direction in which this country is flowing. I say it with utmost responsibility, Madam Chairperson. It is the way this country has treated the non-Sinhala Buddhists, particularly the Tamil nation. It is the consistent refusal to recognize that Sri Lanka is a plurinational country and that there exist several nations in this country. The Sinhalese, the Tamils, why even the Muslims? It is the refusal and the consistent denial of that plurality and the need to centralize that is creating this monster. And it is this monster that is today now destroying your own democracy. It is that consistent refusal to recognize and to be willing to share with others, no matter how numerically small they may be, to be confident to say that this country is big enough for all of us. That severe insecurity that makes it quite ordinary for members to get elected with a 2/3 majority and come and reverse democratic directions that this country has been taking since 94.
Honourable Member,
I'm
your
winding up,
time is
madam.
up.
I'm winding up. I therefore urge members of this House on both sides. This is a mistake. This is a mistake that you all will regret. This is the beginning of a slide that will ultimately lead to not just authoritarianism but dictatorship. At that time you will ask, you will search, and you will find that the non-Sinhala Buddhists, particularly the Tamils, stood with the Sinhalese people in refusing to agree to a systematic dismantling of democracy of the Sinhala nation itself, and we hope that in that same spirit that one day you will begin to change your attitudes towards the Tamils and the Muslims
Please wind up.
and create a plurinational state. Thank you.
Garu Udegam.